way of breaking out of that bubble and reconnecting with the rest of the world?
I don't see that working in my industry, even if you are well paid, as trapping people to the bubble of Hollywood. I've never felt trapped to that, and I know many of my colleagues have not. There is a perception of that that is much bigger than the reality, and much bigger, closer to the reality than it should be as well. But I think that anybody that's involved in anything creative should have a curiosity about the world that their creativity is meant to represent.
Okay. All right, Sean Penn, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Sean Penn and his facial hair. Now, as he puts together his final budget before the election, George Osborne is constrained. Firstly, there's no money because his deficit elimination plan is only half accomplished. And second, on the political side, this is still a coalition budget. But after months, years of stagnant polls, with Labour and the Tories mostly level, can the Chancellor resist using this last opportunity to give his party an electoral edge? Chancellor, of course you can't. Can I ask you about your colleague Michael Gove's phrase that the Tories should be warriors for the dispossessed? Do you agree with that?
Well, I agree. I agree that we should be a party that supports those with lack of opportunity and gives them opportunities. We should help people from low-income backgrounds get into university, have a great education. Above all, we should be the party that helps people get work, and we have created 1.8 million jobs in this country because we have pursued a consistent long-term economic plan.
So this is still a time to help the bottom dog before helping the top dog?
Well, this budget is all about securing a truly national recovery, from building a northern powerhouse, connecting up other regions of our country, committing to long-term plans that support science and high-speed transport, making sure that all parts of our country feel the benefits of the economic recovery, and that's what this budget will be. So no giveaways, no gimmicks, a budget for the long term.
No giveaways, no help for taxpayers by raising the national insurance or income tax thresholds, for instance?
Well, everything we do in this budget has to be paid for. That's been the central argument I've made all along. This country got itself into trouble with unfunded promises, massive borrowing, spending that was out of control.
So this will be a fiscally neutral budget in the phrase.
I've got an economic plan that is delivering more jobs, that is growing our economy, that is raising living standards. We have to go on working through that plan, not throw it away.
So to be clear, this is a budget where everything that you give away or hand out will be paid for by something else. It'll be neutral overall.
My whole argument has been that this country has to pay for things. It has to earn its way in the world.
So is that a yes?
Well, look, I don't want to, I can't reveal on the Andrew Marr show all the details of my budget. But I think people can judge me from the approach I've taken in this Parliament, which is to tell the country the truth about the economic problems it faces, to say that Britain's got to pay its way in the world, it's got to earn a living. We do that by backing our businesses, growing our industry, supporting all parts of the country, making sure we're using the talents of the entire population. And look, this country is in a fundamentally stronger position than it was when I came on this show before the first budget I delivered in this Parliament. But the job isn't done. And we face this critical choice, Andrew. Do we turn back to the chaos of the past, or do we keep on working through this plan that is delivering a recovery for all?
It's very easy to get hung up on statistics and numbers, but the OBR says there's 60% still to do, by and large, and 40% done. And the IFS says that means there are still to come, their word, not the BBC's words, their word, colossal cuts. Is colossal a fair word to use?
Well, we still have to make difficult decisions because we're running, according to the forecast we produced at the autumn statement, a 5% budget deficit. That's still one of the higher budget deficits in the world. Now, it's come down from a half. Come down a half from the 10% we inherited.
You're spending £90 million more than you're bringing in at the moment.
This country's still borrowing too much, and so we have to go on making difficult decisions.
Colossal is a fair word, therefore?
We have set out how we intend to achieve that. The £30 billion of savings that are required, the 13 of that can come from government departments, the 12 from saving money on welfare, the $5 billion from making sure we tackle tax avoidance and evasion and aggressive tax planning. We've demonstrated in this Parliament that you can make these sorts of savings and, by the way, have a police force that is cutting crime, have an education system that is teaching more kids in outstanding schools, have a health service where public satisfaction has gone up.
So but in the next Parliament, there are going to be very, very deep cuts. And given that, Are you still completely committed to the timescale and the actual scale of the 23 billion surplus that you're talking about?
Well, look, we have set out our plans and we intend to fulfil
and
our
stage,
plans.
that 23 billion remains in your head as the target you're going for?
Well, as I say, the forecasts will be produced next week, and I can't talk about those in advance. But the plans we have set out are the plans we intend to follow through, which is the £30 billion of savings we expect to find in government departments. And once we've achieved that, making sure we don't get ourselves into trouble again, making sure the state is affordable.
Day, but that £23 billion is not a figure that you're flinching away from.
Our argument is we have to run a surplus in the good years. Fix the roof when the sun is shining.
I understand that.
That was the tragedy. We didn't do that before the crash, and as a result, under that Labour government, we were so ill prepared for what happened.
But in those good years, if there is something like a 23 billion surplus, you've said that 7 billion of that is earmarked for tax cuts, by and large for people earning more than £41,000 a year, which is a relatively large amount of money in this country. Is that really the priority that you've got at the end of the next period of pain to give tax cuts to people earning 41,000 or more?
No, we have two priorities. One is to increase the tax-free personal allowance to £12,500 for everyone. That means taking people out of tax or on the minimum wage, and also raising that higher threshold to £50,000. So only people earning £50,000 are paying the 40% charge. Now, those are our priorities. We've set them out. We are explaining how they are consistent with the plan that we have set out. And by the way, these are not just
paid for by big cuts.
Andrew, these are not just nice things to have. This is all about making work pay. It's a fundamental part of our economic plan. It's a fundamental part of the welfare changes that we've made under Ian Duncan Smith, that it rewards people to go out and work. And as a result, there are 1.8 million more jobs in this country. The rate of employment in this country has never been higher. I mean, that is an extraordinary achievement, and it is a credit to the British people and the British businesses that have created those jobs.
Because the British economy is growing again. But meanwhile, those relatively deep cuts, which are going to affect real people and cause real damage to lots of real people, you're saying we have to do that for the sake of the country.
I don't accept.
You don't think there are going to be any pain?
There are going to be difficult decisions, but I think what we've demonstrated...
Difficult decisions for you, pain for other people.
But I think what we've demonstrated in this Parliament is a care for taxpayers' money, that if you reform public services, you can improve the delivery of those services, that you can't have great public services like an education system and a national health service unless you have a strong economy, and that we've given support and freedom to the people working in those services, working so hard on our behalf.
If you won't acknowledge the word colossal, will you acknowledge the proportion that you've done 40% and there's still 60% to be done?
Well, actually, we've set out 5 years of plans, and we have 2 more years after that, the £30 billion that Parliament has voted on. We Conservatives have set out how to achieve that, the 13 billion from departments, the 12 billion from welfare, the 5 billion from tax avoidance. I've not heard any plans from any other parties, because I think they would take us back to the chaos of borrowing and spending and jobs lost and the economy back in crisis.
The 12 billion in welfare, you've set out some of that. You haven't really told us where most of that is coming from yet.
Well, we are going to set out our plans in a comprehensive spending review later this year. But again, when people look at us, they say they've got a track record, they've shown they can deliver, they've shown they can turn this economy around. Now we face the critical choice. Do we go back to the chaos, or do we proceed with the competence of a plan that's working?
You've talked a lot about the northern powerhouse, and you're clearly committed to the north, and you've offered the big northern cities more powers for their mayors and so forth. If they go along with all of that, if they accept your idea for greater devolution and working together, what do they get in return?
Well, I think this northern powerhouse is something we've got to build in our country, because that gap between the north and the south has grown and grown over decades, and governments of all persuasions have tried to deal with it and failed. The exciting thing at the moment is that more jobs are being created in the north and the Midlands than in the south at a faster rate.
Sure.
We've got to continue that.
These cities more together,
I think you take these great northern cities, which geographically are quite close to each other, make them bigger than the sum of their parts. Make the sum of the parts bigger.
Yeah.
Create great transport links. Make sure we have high-speed links across the Pennines. We're investing in northern transport, investing also in science, in industry and in manufacturing in the north of England. And then we'll have a rival to London, not because we want to pull London down. It's fantastic we've got one of the greatest capital cities in the world.
We're going to see
we need more strings to, we need to, as a country, to have more strings to our bow. We can't just rely on the strength of London.
Rebalancing of public spending in terms of infrastructure and so forth to the north. That is coming.
Well, a big theme of this budget is securing that truly national recovery backing the Northern Powerhouse, connecting up all parts of our country, investing in science, industry and transport, making sure that we have a long-term economic plan for every part of the United Kingdom.
Can I just ask you about the pensions announcement today, that basically if you're going to retire in the future, then you can cash in the money and use it as you like, and that is now going to apply to people who are currently with pensioned with an annuity.
Well, we've already given freedom to people saving for a pension. What we're going to do today is give freedom to the 5 million pensioners who have an annuity. Now, for many of them, that will be the right thing to have, but some will want access to that money, so we're going to change the law. It's all part of trusting people who've worked hard and saved hard all their lives. It's all part of having a long-term economic plan where we build our country on savings and investment.
What about silly folk who blow it and then come straight back to you saying, I've spent it on a fantastic Lamborghini, which I've now crashed, or a holiday. I don't want to give Jeremy Clarkson on this, or I've been on a fantastic holiday. I've lost my money, Chancellor. What are you going to do about me now?
Well, I just think that's a very patronising attitude to take towards people who have shown responsibility, saved through their lives, saved for a pension. Look, what I'm saying is we've given those freedoms to people saving for a pension. Let's give the freedom to people who've got a pension, got an annuity, 5 million people. Many of them will want to keep that annuity. For some, however, they will want access to the money. By changing the law, we're trusting people who have worked hard and saved hard all their lives.
This morning, Nigel Farage offers the Conservatives a possible deal. He says that if you agree to a referendum in-out on Europe this year, before Christmas, he would be happy to support a Conservative government from the outside, not joining the Cabinet or anything else. What do you say to that?
Well, it's just total nonsense. Voting for Nigel Farage makes Ed Miliband the likely Prime Minister, and it means that instead of getting a referendum on Europe, you get no referendum at all. So that's what a vote for UKIP is all about. And it's a fundamentally different situation from the SNP. You were asking Ed Balls about it. He again refused to rule out a deal with the SNP. And everyone knows that the SNP...
the same way, unless you rule out a deal with... Do you rule out a deal with Nigel Farage under all circumstances?
Look, we are going to get we are fighting for a majority.
So no deals under any circumstances.
We only need 23 more seats to get that majority. And this is
the same question to you. It's fair.
I think that fundamentally... Nigel Farage, and indeed Ed Balls, are trying to muddy the waters. It's a fundamentally different situation for this reason. Nigel Farage is not going to win seats in the House of Commons. He's going to win some. Even on his own estimation, even on his own boasts, he says he's going to win a small handful. The SNP are likely to win dozens of seats because of the collapse of the Labour Party. Ed Miliband can't be Prime Minister without the support of... That creates an alliance between those who want to bankrupt the country and those who want to break up the country.
You know perfectly well there are possible circumstances when the DUP and UKIP could, with the Conservatives, form a government.
We've got such a simple...
It could happen.
We've got such a simple argument in this election, which is you can choose the competence of David Cameron's leadership and the long-term plan that is working, or the chaos of all the alternatives. And that is the choice we're putting to the British people in this election.
You can say the same words on your side that Ed Balls wouldn't or couldn't say on his side. You can say, I rule out any deal with UKIP after the election.
That is simply, even engaging with Nigel Farage on this is giving him credibility where he has no credibility.
Say those words and you change the situation.
The truth is, a vote for Nigel Farage is a vote for the Labour Party, a vote for Ed Miliband as Prime Minister, and it means no referendum on Europe. And people need to know that going into those polling.
This feels like a mirror conversation with Ed Balls.
But it is, as I say, it's fundamentally different because of the collapse of the Labour Party in Scotland. There are potentially dozens of SNP MPs, nationalists who want to break up our country, and Ed Miliband and Ed Balls are openly contemplating a deal to get themselves into Downing Street on the back of people who want to break up the United Kingdom.
Do you despise Nigel Farage? Do you dislike him? Do you regard him with contempt?
No, I just don't think he's a credible participant in this election because all he does is open the door to a Labour victory, and all the things he says he wants to tackle, like a referendum on Europe or action on welfare and the like, are things that would get worse under a Labour government, the thing that he would facilitate.
There is now a low-level political war going on between the Conservative Party and the defence establishment because you won't allow your colleagues to commit themselves to 2% of GDP, the NATO target on defence. Why won't you do that?
Well, we are meeting our 2% target.
At the moment, but not in the future. It's about the future. It's about the next 5 years.
We've made big commitments in the future to grow the defence equipment budget, to spend £160 billion on the latest aircraft and the latest submarines and the latest equipment for our fighting forces.
But, Chancellor, we're going around the world as a country saying to all the other NATO countries, commit to 2% of GDP on defence. It's really important for NATO, and you won't do it for us.
Well,
Why not?
We are meeting the 2% target.
At the moment, I'm talking about the future.
The right time to decide your defence budget is when you have a strategic defence review and you make an assessment of what Britain needs to pursue its foreign policy interests around the globe.
But you can make you've made long-term commitments.
To make sure that Britain is a presence in every part of our country.
But you've made long-term commitments about the NHS, about overseas aid. Why won't you do it for defence?
I've made a commitment because the defence budget for equipment is something that needs it means many, many years of planning. We've made a commitment to grow the defence budget by 1%. That's £160 billion committed to the latest ships, the latest submarines, the latest aircraft. I was in Portsmouth the other day seeing the work being done to prepare for the two of the largest aircraft carriers the world has ever seen that are coming to the Royal Navy.
Final question, the so-called Google tax. Is it actually possible to tax global companies who aren't paying their fair share of tax in the UK and still have them functioning as effective companies in this country? Google's a very popular company.
Well, I'm not going to refer to any individual companies. The short answer to your question is absolutely yes. We like multinationals being based here. We like them creating jobs here, but they should pay their taxes here as well. And we're the first government to take action. That tax comes into effect at the beginning of next month. We're absolutely serious in attracting investment. We're absolutely serious about people paying their fair share of tax.
George Osborne, for now, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and over to Steph for the news headlines.
Hello. The president of Vanuatu has told the BBC most of his people are homeless after the devastating cyclone that hit the Pacific island nation on Friday. It's thought up to 90% of the homes in the capital have been damaged by Cyclone Pam, along with schools and hospitals. At least 8 people are reported to have been killed, and the authorities have declared a state of emergency. Up to 5 million pensioners are to be given the freedom to cash in their annuity in exchange for a cash lump sum. The measure, due to come into effect in 2016, will be unveiled by Chancellor George Osborne in this week's budget. Speaking earlier on this programme, the Chancellor ruled out any giveaways or gimmicks in this week's budget, saying his priority was a truly national recovery, but that difficult decisions still had to be taken. That's all for me for now. The next news on BBC One is at 1 o'clock. Back to Andrew in a moment, but first a look at what's coming up immediately after this programme.
Join us live from Leicester on Mothering Sunday when we ask, do we discriminate against stay-at-home mums? And for all those disappointed petrol heads, has Britain become hostile to blokes, then ex-Muslims, who lose more than their faith? See you at 10 on BBC One.
The Chancellor is still with me, and we're joined once again by his would-be nemesis, Ed Balls. Welcome back to you both. Now, one of the things that happened at the last election, we've had a long and very, very boring discussion about whether or not there'd be leader interviews. But the last general election, you debated with Alistair Darling and Nick Clegg. Would you do the same thing again with Ed Balls this time round?
Well, I'm sure we'll have a debate of the various finance spokesmen of the different parties. We had one at the last election. But I think it's sensible to let the broadcasters and the party leaders work out their plan, and then we'll work out our plans. But I'm looking forward to it, Ed.
Ed, are you keen on this debate happening?
Of course. In fact, I'd like to go further. George and I don't need the broadcasters to sort these things out. George is not a coward. David Cameron doesn't want a head-to-head with Ed Miliband, but I'm very happy. I will have a head-to-head debate, just the two of us, the two potential chancellors during the election campaign, and you can say now, are you up for it?
Well, as I say, I'm happy to have these chancellors' debates as we did in the last election.
Come on, George, let's go for it.
Well, I'm happy to meet you in a debate.
We should shake on it and go for it. 1 to 1. 1 to 1.
Ed, I'm not going to... I'm
1 to 1.
Happy.
1 to 1.
Well, we're going to see who else wants to be part of that.
I've
got a very effective chief secretary who I think would also want to be part of that debate.
Now, you may not
if only David Cameron was up for a 1-to-1 debate like George would be all right. But for some reason, David Cameron's running scared.
I think we should include Danny Alexander.
No, 1-to-1. We just shook on it.
There is a horrible, horrible rumour going around Westminster that actually, although you may disagree on various things, you get on very well. Is that true?
Well, I think we do get on reasonably well.
We spent so much time on this sofa over the years.
I wouldn't say we're the best of friends, but look, I think in politics you do have to try and detach the personal from the professional. And look, we have passionately different ideas about what needs to happen to the country, but that doesn't mean we should be uncivil to each other.
On that very happy note, you want to be best of friends, which leads me very nicely to our music at the end. We're almost out of time. Join us again at the same time next Sunday when my guest will include Alex Salmond. Until then, we leave you with a cast of Beautiful, the Carole King musical currently wowing London's West End. This is something which both my guests here will surely approve of, as they've just showed. You've Got a Friend, a feel-good classic if there ever was one. Take it away.
When you're down and troubled and you need some love and care and nothing is going right, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there, yes, I will. You got a friend.
Now ain't it good to know that you've got a friend when people can be so cold?
They'll hurt you, yes, and desert you. They'll take your soul if you let them. Oh, but don't you let them. You just call out my name,
Just call
and you know wherever I am, I'll come running, yeah, yeah, to see you again. Oh, baby,
winter, spring, summer, or fall. Winter, spring, summer, or fall.
all you have to do is call, and I'll be there, yes, I will. You got a friend.